Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Kiera, social media coordinator at Chatterkick. And today we're diving into a conversation that honestly everybody's been talking about lately: how to structure a modern marketing team with AI in the mix. There's a lot of talk about the tools or the productivity hacks and prompts. And we've seen time and time again that I think now people are starting to wonder what a marketing team looks like with AI as a teammate. Um, and how leaders should restructure things without losing the human side of their brand. That's something that really has been coming up a lot in our conversation. So, there's nobody better to have this conversation with than Beth. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's great to have a podcast with you. Beth Trejo, I'm the CEO and founder of Chatterkick. If we haven't met before, I started the company about 14 years ago, and I think I had a natural tendency at that time to always chase what was new, and social media is constantly changing and evolving, and I think it was just a natural fit as AI came onto the scene that we would try to figure out how to leverage it, how to integrate it, and how to keep the human in the right spot, because that is one of our biggest missions at Chattercake is human connection. And so I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that today.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Thanks for chatting with me about this. Let's start pretty broad because I feel like a lot of people just need to help envision that, like put themselves into the situation. So let's talk about how someone could envision what this would actually look like for them and their team. Like, what does the day to day work inside a marketing team look like right now with AI?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I have noticed, even over the last probably 10 years, let's even go 5 years, is a lot of marketing leaders, CMOs, or they're heading up departments, or maybe they're a small department, but they're trying to figure out how to bring in partners and contractors. But there still was a lot of traditional structure. So that typically looked like, your creative team in one silo or one category, and maybe your paid media team in another category, your email team. Maybe you'd have a creative director that would kind of coordinate all of it. The actual structure of the marketing departments really didn't vary that much. And a lot of it was based in channels, roles, like, so you'd have maybe a social media, and then you'd have a direct marketing or whatever it was, or you would have them in teams. And that's really at Chattercake several years ago, we made that move into the pod model, which
Mhm.
really broke the boundaries of the traditional role of marketing. And we kind of said, you know what, this is what we need for social. We need someone who knows audiences and analytics. That's one person. We knew someone who knew community and engagement and could actually interact. Another person, we needed somebody who could be that creative vision, but also have the actual ability to do the things. And so we had our visual content strategist, and then we needed someone to help glue it all together, and then maybe a couple people to help glue it all together, and that's our customer success managers. So that particular model had been kind of floating around in some companies in the past, but I think when you look at how AI came so fast and is still coming so fast at teams, it really is making these marketing leaders understand and really question, should we just build it better? Could we build it better? And I think that is really what we want to answer today, is like, how can you build it better so that the tools take up the right spots and the right space, and the people are still there and able to do the best things that really only humans are better at these days.
Yeah, I think it's important to make the distinction that like the marketing team had changed a little bit before AI even came into the mix, because I think people assume that with AI coming in that it automatically means people are getting replaced. And a lot of teams are still trying to figure out how the work is getting redistributed without AI. So I think it's just like a part that people underestimate, that the output it can change with AI in the mix, but it's more about how teams are spending their time, like how the people are spending their time and what their roles and responsibilities are within the work that they're doing. It's not taking anything away. It's not taking human beings away. So let's build on that a little bit, take it to the next level and add AI in. How are the marketing roles then evolving with AI? Do you see any roles or responsibilities growing or anything shrinking or disappearing altogether, which I think is everybody's worst fear?
Right. Well, I think, obviously different businesses are approaching this in multiple ways. And I do think that there are businesses that are looking to reduce headcount. I'm not necessarily saying that's the right or the wrong thing to do, but it would be ignorant to say that that's not happening in some organizations. But one of the things that I think is the most interesting that is happening in teams is just the, I would say, like drift of role clarity. So
Mm,
there's a lot of creative people that maybe they were really good at copywriting, right? But they also could do email marketing because they could write the emails and they figured out how to deploy the email. And they could also tinker a little bit in design work, right? And so in the past, there would be kind of those, I would say, bold lines on the side where maybe that team just they couldn't do it fast enough, they couldn't do it well enough, they couldn't get it shipped to the next stage of the marketing process. And what's happening now are these tools are taking that bold line and they're kind of dampening that a little bit. And so the individual's skill sets are going wider within roles. And that in a positive sense is they get to try, they get to learn, they get to build and do new things. On the shadow side of that is it becomes a lot of context switching because now you're doing a lot of things and you have to kind of remove some of the things from the plate if you want to keep piling on, even if you have an AI tool in the mix. And so I think that's kind of the two dynamics that we're seeing is roles are getting a little bit wider. And the good side of it, it can really increase creativity and innovation. And on the other side of it, it can lead to a little bit of mental overload, overwhelm, or honestly cost if you're using these tools because
mm,
they can get expensive really quickly.
yeah. When you think about teams that have adapted the fastest using AI, what kind of things do you feel like they understand or like catch on to really quickly that help them move quickly and like that? Maybe there are things that people are understanding earlier than everybody else.
I think the teams that are getting the most from AI. And I don't like to only focus on efficiency because I don't think efficiency is actually the fun part of AI. I think the creativity is the best part of AI. But I think the teams and individuals that are getting the most out of it are those that are just used to friction. They're used to friction in their job, they're used to friction maybe in their life, and they're not afraid to go through some annoying work because they see the end and what it could be. And those are the individuals that I feel like are just taking these tools and running with them. And I think some people are doing it in small doses, and that's not a bad thing either. I think we need the people to kind of pull the ones that go fast and furious, and those that kind of keep, the consistency and the steadiness within an
Steadiness.
organization. But I do see that trait of just seeing before doing and then trying to figure out how to get there as one of those that really make someone able to leverage the tools and get really good output.
Are there any roles that you feel like you hear people panic about the most, that they think AI is gonna completely change it or take it away that you don't actually think, is a possibility of it being going anywhere anytime soon?
I think that the customer service angle is where a lot of people are trying to automate. Meaning whether that's answering phone calls, chat bots, self-serve information. And I think that that's valuable to a point, but I predict that there's going to be companies that just totally revert and like push against that. And it's their decision on, again, where to place the technology and the humans. And if they place the humans a little closer to their customers, they actually might win, even though it's not the most time um, the time isn't necessarily the lever, it's the experience. And I
Mm,
think there's gonna be some businesses that see that earlier, and they're like, "You know what? Our value is you call us, you get a human." And I know I would pay more for something like that in some instances, right? Like, I'm so sick of on phone trees. And other instances, I'm like, you know what? Just give me an FAQ article. I'll figure it out myself. So
Mhm,
I do think that the customer service element is one that is overly um, weighted as
mhm,
the best spot for AI. I also think that there are roles that are changing in more of an editing space. They are doing less of the doing and building and becoming more of an editor. And I do think that some people love that because they're like, you know what, I like that. I feel like I get to direct and I get to, be the person that steers the ship. And there
mhm.
are some people that really don't like it because their craft was in the build. And
Right.
so I think that some people may shift in terms of their preferences or how they want to take roles on.
And with all the changes, like we're talking about, it seems like there are a flood of new job titles popping up from companies and businesses that want to hire a person to do this, but they really don't know how to list out what the roles and responsibilities are. Yet there's just like a big umbrella of like, can you do marketing? And do you know how to use AI? What new roles have you seen that are a good example, or like that you think would be like a really valuable add to a business versus just overall, do you know how to use these things? Like, come in and tell us and run the show, like, we trust you.
I think that regardless of the title of the roles, I think there's a couple commonalities that I see. One is the ability to direct. And I don't mean that in just the sense of like some people would call that a strategist. I'm talking about being able to understand the weeds enough to really be specific about how you think a problem could be solved, and then being able to be very good at communication skills and making that happen. And then you have to communicate that to the rest of your team. So I really think high quality communication skills, and that doesn't need to be verbal communication. It could be a lot of forms of communication, but communication skills are still going to be extremely valuable, and we see that with different roles. I see digital storyteller roles, which I
Mhm.
think will stand the test of time because the tools and technologies can come and go, but telling a really compelling story is an art. And even though there is formulas for it, even though there are tools and technologies to support, it's still really hard to tell a story and keep people's attention, even for the best narrators out there. So I think that those roles are really interesting in the digital storytelling space. And then I also think that people and businesses are trying to hire like people who know AI to come and solve problems. But I think that sometimes that's a really hard position, again, to take if I was going into that company, and also to hire for, because you have to know the problems you're going to solve regardless of the AI tools. And so externally coming in, sometimes it's hard to really unearth all of the problems, and you may be better off finding just the person who's a really good problem solver but just can't get this problem solved. They could be a starting point for really helping to kind of build some of your systems and tools using
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that about the AI strategist because it does seem like that's what everybody wants or is saying that they want. But I think on both ends, it's difficult to understand what that actually means yet to be an AI strategist. Um, One thing I think that a lot of people are struggling with right now is where AI stops and where like what is the guardrail between the human and the AI? If is it creativity or like where do the nuances and the judgment matter the most? I think it would be helpful to have people understand what the humans own and hard stop what AI could take.
I think that understanding where AI starts and stop, or should start or stop within a company, is a question that I know I don't have the answer to, and so many businesses don't either, because these tools are continuously improving, they're evolving. Um, I think the best case scenario for businesses is to stay curious help support your teams so that they can handle the changes that come their way, because that's also exhausting, is to these constant changes. It's exhausting for leaders and for teams. And to just be aware and evaluate some of just, I'm just going to call it the vibes. What feels right, what feels off. A perfect example of that is I am building a tool that now will be able to communicate internally, like within a Slack channel or within a Teams channel. And one of the things I realized was, because it was going to be coming from me, I wanted to make sure that the team knew that that message was actually sent by Claude, not by Beth. And so it was said on behalf of Beth. But it's just those little nuances of like, hey, this message is sent by Claude from Beth. If there's anything that feels off on this, please respond here. But, just deploying things blindly feels terrifying to me. And that does feel where we need to have some human oversight, because you've seen lots of stories where things have gone wrong.
Mm. Speaking of things that could and have gone wrong, do you have any like cautionary tales for things that you've seen or heard about or experienced yourself when companies might be ready to lean into AI, but they maybe lean too heavily in one way or another?
Yeah, I have been, and I'm a pretty fast and furious person when it comes to taking risks and, letting technologies kind of do the things on my devices or my computers. But I have been pretty conservative in how far I'll let the AI tool go in one swoop. So I always like to start in a planning mode scenario, whether regardless of the tool, let's get a plan here. And as someone who is in high detail, but this is really important, you have to read the output. You cannot scan the output before you go on to the next step. And it takes discipline, I know, from my end, because I just want to go. I want to build, I want to do these things. And that consuming and editing of the information is not the fun part for me. But I think it's the critical part, because there are times when I didn't read all the fine print, or I look at, a recommendation from a plan and I'm like, I don't really know what it's talking about. Seems okay. And then I'll ask a follow-up question. And they'll be like, actually, that's a great question. Maybe we shouldn't do that. And I was like, oh, geez, well, I'm glad I asked that question. So I really think that, start in plan mode before you have it take any action on your behalf. And then when you have it start taking action on your behalf, do it in a very safe environment, meaning it doesn't have a lot of access, or it wouldn't be a high risk if things went off the rails. You don't want to just plug it into a system and say, hey, why don't you go ahead and draft all those emails for me and responses, because that terrifies me.
Yeah. Yeah, that would scare me too. And I do understand that being the editor for the output does get to be a bit much, especially when you're using it like quickly, or you're trying to just get to the end, like you really want the product. But that is really important, because it's going to assume that whatever you just replied to is completely fine and doesn't need any edits before it keeps going. So
Yeah.
step by step, making sure that you like slow down, no matter how fast you're going, like slowing down the process. That's really good advice. So let's help everybody paint the picture a little bit more clearly. In contrast to what we talked about earlier with what a marketing team kind of looks like now and how that's evolving, what does a team who wants to stay human centric but include AI actually look like in practice? Are there any like tips or things that should be top of mind?
I would think less about the traditional marketing, like channels, silos, even roles, and think more about how do you bring small teams together that have complementing complementary personalities, so they don't need to all be the same type of people, but how are those small teams going to work together and support them with agents or AI or prompts that can be better versions of themselves. Oftentimes, that looks like visibility with data, helping them make decisions from a clarity perspective, Get some of the admin stuff off of them. People spend so much time moving data from one spot to another spot. Those are great first spots to kind of optimize and organize. And then also make sure that even though those roles have drift from, one kind of specialty to another, I think it's going to be in part important for all of us to bring that back to the table often and say, okay, realignment. We went 3 months, we went 6 months. What do we need to have clarity on? Because I do think that these roles are going to bleed more and more into each other. And I think groupings of small teams have always been extremely not only efficient, but there's amazing work that can happen when you put people together and support them with the technologies that, again, will hopefully make them more innovative, not just more efficient.
Okay, last question. And honestly, probably the biggest one if there are any leaders listening right now. If a leader of a company wants to restructure their business right now, and their marketing team, what's their next baby step? Like, what's the next easy first step that they could take toward their goal of doing that?
Yes. So I think if you are a marketing director or a marketing leader and you're trying to figure out where do I start, my first recommendation is talk to your team. Try to understand their usage of these AI tools. And it might be one tool, it might be 4 tools, but you really need to get a foundation of how much the individual users are comfortable, fluent, and ready to experiment with these tools. I think that baseline alone will help you get a good understanding of where you're at, and then you can decide where you want to be. And how you want to start structuring things either differently, or maybe it's a slower transition if you're a big enterprise, or you can go faster if you're a smaller business.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Beth.
Yeah,
I think this was
again.
a great conversation. I think people are going to get a lot of value out of it because people honestly, no matter how fast AI is moving, I think people are always wondering like, well, what do I do now? What do I do next? It's a
Yeah.
lot to keep up with. So, and I appreciate that what we added to the conversation was that it doesn't have to be fear-based, it doesn't have to be big and scary, there's opportunity for everyone and for teams to be more intentional about the work they're doing and still stay creative and human in the way they work, and as long as the leaders approach it thoughtfully and carefully, that there's a lot of opportunity for everyone. So thanks for sharing your perspective on this today. If anyone is watching or listening, don't forget to connect with Beth on LinkedIn and follow Chatterkick for more conversations like this about marketing and leadership and the future of social media. If there's a topic you'd love for us to cover, just let us know in the comments. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.